G'day everyone and welcome to another edition of Tuesday Night Live, brought to you by Crowcast, of course. Lots to talk about. We're into the preliminary finals of the AFL Final Series for this year. There's been a few signings and a bit of action around Crows Land and a bit of interest in general draft and trading news as well. So without any further ado, why don't we just get stuck straight into it, shall we? Welcome to another Tuesday Night Live. Apologies for last week. I was a little bit under the weather, but back on deck tonight and plenty to talk about as a result. Thanks to everyone who's joined us on Discord and YouTube and maybe even Twitch as well. And a special welcome to my cohort, Peter. How you going, Pete?
Pete, how are you this evening? I'm feeling very well.
That's good to hear. Good to hear. You got through Father's Day unscathed.
I don't know if I would say exactly unscathed. I think there might have been some fairly ordinary behaviour towards late Sunday night and very, very slow on Monday, but we got there in the end. Yeah. I think probably just a little bit throaty as well from the goings on Sunday. So it was a bit of a big day in the end. Yeah.
Fair enough. Very good.
How
very
about
good.
You?
Fairly quiet. My son bought himself a multi-million-dollar bloody racing sim, and we had Father's Day at his place on Friday night, and it's needless to say, I'm not a racing car driver, and thank God for the fact that it was only a simulator. Never mind. All right. Thanks, as I said, to everyone who's joined us on Discord. Don't forget, Tuesday Night Live is interactive as always. We've got a nice studio audience in there, Peter, 17 odd people. I'm sure there's a few people that would like to have something to say, so don't be shy. If you want to crack in, stick your hand up and we'll get you on. Also, thanks to everyone who's joined us on YouTube, of course. Don't forget those who use YouTube to tune in. Tell your mates we want to get those subs up if we can, so we can offer a few more features through the YouTube channel as well. Now, Peter, just a quick recap of last weekend's games. What do you think?
Yeah, I saw both games, and I guess like everybody, I was thrilled watching the Saturday night semi-final. It was a cracking game of football, and I thought that the Bulldogs did pretty well to get over the line, and the Friday night game was a little bit disappointing, but I think GWS had run their race.
Yeah. Great.
So anyway, it'll be interesting to see how they now match up in the prelim finals. I just can't help feeling. I mean, there's not always going to be a lot of sympathy coming out of Adelaide for the Western Bulldogs, is there? But I can't help but feeling a bit sympathetic that they've played a home final in Launceston, then they've had to go to Brisbane, then they have to go to Perth, and then they have to come back to Adelaide. It's just I cannot believe the degree which Porter being kissed where this year. It's quite phenomenal.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, if they don't win a flag from here, Feen, it'll be one of the almightiest chokes in history.
What's on my face, Razor? Someone's giving me shit about something on my face. I did just have a nice burger with. They just want me to shave. Bugger off. Look, you're right.
My comments must be really insightful if they're worried about your shaving thing.
It's become a bit of a topic. I don't know why. Anyway, look, you're right. Port have absolutely no excuses this year. No excuses whatsoever. But my gut feel is, Peter, that Western Bulldogs are going to get over the line this weekend.
Oh, yeah. You know what? I was barracking for the Dogs over Brisbane for no other reason than I thought of the two teams. I thought they are the only one that could possibly pull that off.
Yeah, I don't think Brisbane would have. I think Brisbane have pretty much spent their tickets and a few key outs as well in that team. But Bulldogs, notwithstanding the fact that Bontempelli is a bit sore and we wait to hear on Waitman, I don't think that's been sorted out yet, has it, Cody Waitman?
Yeah, he's been withdrawn.
Oh, he's been withdrawn,
Yeah,
has he?
that was officially from the Bulldogs as well. So he's
Right.
gone. Waitman's out. And
That'll hurt them a bit because he's a live wire up there.
oh yeah, he brings great energy and and he kicks goals. He's been a good player. So
yeah.
And this is the thing with Port. I mean, we see it. We seem to see it every week. There seems to be a wherever they're playing, star player out every week.
Yeah, well,
it's quite phenomenal.
The big thing for the Bullies is that they're going to have to work out a way to contain the tall timber up forward. I think. I think they've got the midfield covered, and I think they've got enough weapons up forward to kick a score. But are they going to be able to cover the tall timber? Dixon, Marshall, Georgiadis, assuming he plays. There's a bit down there to combat overhead.
There is, but I kind of I just really feel with Port that they've stacked that forward line with tools, and that really does seem to be the decoy. And they really do seem to get the damage that's done is done at ground level to me. And I think that that's actually if the Bullies are going to have a chance, then I think that there's a lot of ball that what those tools do for Port is they very very good at bringing the ball to ground level. But you see a lot of the goal kickers are they're smaller and medium sized players.
Yeah, that's true.
Rosie, Fantasia, Gray. These guys are the guys that kick through. You don't often see Charlie kick 3, 4, or 5, or Marshall kick 3, 4, or 5. It's always those small medium players. So I think the big guys are a bit of a decoy, and I think that while the attention is on them, I think those other guys feast. I reckon there's quite a bit of ground ball that goes on in that Port forward line, and a player who may have more influence than anybody else for the Western Bulldogs may well be Caleb Daniel.
Yes.
The way that he mops up back there at ground level, and the way that he sets the Bulldogs up back there, he may be a player that actually benefits from that, and he could be a key player in the end, even though diminutive stature.
Yeah, I was mentioning to Makarnicki on Sunday that I don't understand why teams don't put more work into Daniel, because he really is the quarterback for them, across halfback. Cleans up everything.
Him with nobody on him. I was watching it with the son, and we were just looking and seeing, just floating around the contest, floating around the stoppage. There was no one within a bull's roar of him.
Yeah. J&M asking why Peter's speaking in like he was in a library. I would imagine J&M that's because he's a very learned gentleman.
And I probably got a little bit of voices sort of left me after my exploits down at McLaren Vale on Sunday, I have to say.
Supposed to be a cultured event down there. The other interesting one will be how Port use Aaliyah, because it's a little bit of a different setup for the Bulldogs, and they don't come in, with that high ball very often. They usually run it right up to the 50, and it's a lot of, a bit of Richmond about them, the way they get the ball forward, and that might not play into Aaliyah's hands. And I wonder whether they might actually stick Aaliyah a little bit deeper to be third man up against Norton, etc. A little bit deeper, because if he hangs around the 50, I reckon the ball's just going to keep getting kicked over his head.
Yeah. No, I think that's a quite a fair point, and they're really. I mean, in terms of what there is for the Bulldogs up forward, you're right. There's really only Norton. Shaki is really just a bit of a traffic cone, isn't he, up there?
Yeah, pretty much.
I mean, the only thing that I could, whether they get someone like a Shaki to try and run Aaliyah out the play, but I think Port would be too smart for that, and I think Aaliyah would be too smart a player for that. I think they're probably happy for Shaki to have a bit of time by himself anyway.
You just called Ken Hinckley smart? That goes against the mantra of the Crowcast, mate. Come on.
No, I think what I meant to say is Aaliyah himself would probably be too smart for that.
Right. Okay.
Yeah. It's only look. I mean, we can I think we can reach for some reasons why the doggies might win, but I just think it's such a massive advantage to have been sleeping in your own bed for 2 weeks, while the Bulldogs have just been
as opposed to being on a train, on
all
a
corners
plane.
of the globe.
Yeah.
I mean, they've just been all over the place. It's just horrendous. So
Yeah.
Jamara. I don't know why they don't play Jamara. Why don't they play Jamara?
I'm not
Why
sure.
would they play?
I'm not sure why that is, because he's a young lad, in and out of the games. But I tell you what, there's some flashes of real brilliance, and it's not as if they're spoilt for choice up forward. So I'm not sure why that is. Maybe they bring him in. Who knows? Anyway, and the other one, Pete, Melbourne Geelong. Any chance Geelong?
I think they're always a chance just because of the talent they've got at their disposal, and they're a curious team, aren't they? Because they have a really poor record in qualifying finals. I don't know why that is. It's really quite strange. And then they seem to then be able to get themselves back around. But I don't know. Melbourne have been in super hot form. But it was only 2 or 3 weeks ago that Geelong had them dead to rights in the last quarter of that game down at Cardinia Park. So really, for me, this is a much harder one to pick than the Port game.
It is. I think Geelong did the right thing and did the wrong thing in the quali by not playing Radaglia. I think it exposed them too much to that rebound. And when they played Radaglia last week, it looked a far better structure, and as a consequence, Hawkins got a bit loose, Cameron got a bit loose. Their spearheads all got involved, and I think the inclusion of Radaglia against Melbourne is going to, I would imagine, the aim would be to make Lever accountable. And once you make Lever accountable one-on-one, we know that he's not the greatest one-on-one player. And then it also knock-on pressure to Stephen May. So I think the battle's going to be lost for Geelong in the midfield. I just don't think that they have got the legs anymore and the grunt to go with Petrarca and Oliver. Assuming that those two play to their potential, Geelong's midfield looked decidedly one-paced, in my opinion. And they got a lot of ball from Zach Tui off half-back last week. And I don't... 31 on touches, I think Tui had. I don't think they're going to get the same service from Tui this week.
So let me put this question to you. If we assume that Port and Melbourne go through...
Yeah.
And I think... And I think there's a story there just in terms of the bye week before the finals. It's amazing how... when they've removed that, we're back to 1 and 2, probably getting through, which is how it always used to be. That week by, you can't ignore the statistic that makes a massive difference in terms of teams getting from the lower part of the 8. But anyway, so let's just assume that those two teams get through. Let me put this to you.
Yep.
Who out of the two teams gets more of an advantage of the way that the prelims are structured? Does Melbourne, the fact that they're there in Perth, that they get a game on the ground, that they then, that they've been there, they've been training there, or Port, getting over there and just having the one game there? Who do you think gets more of the advantage in the end?
I mean, logic probably tells you Melbourne in terms of acclimatisation and playing a game on the ground this week and all that sort of stuff. But to be honest with you, Peter, I don't think there's a huge advantage. I think the biggest advantage for Melbourne is the fact that Optus Stadium is a very similar configuration to the MCG. And the MCG, they play, a gazillion times a year under normal circumstances, whereas Port play their home games, on a much skinnier ground. I think the fact that Optus Stadium is very similar to the MCG means that Melbourne don't have to mess around with their structures too much, whereas Port have to adapt, I think. So I'd probably say not so much with the travel, but just in terms of where the game is being played, I think Melbourne get a little advantage there.
Yep. No, fair call.
Yeah, but on the other hand, you'd imagine there'd be some fanfare and hoopla over there in grand final week. but it's certainly not the same for Melbourne as a week in their hometown leading up to grand final. It would be slightly disappointing for those players, I'd imagine, not being able to play a grand final in front of their home crowd. Where do you reckon the support is going to be over in Perth?
It's a good question.
Not a lot of corporates going because, by comparison, because of the location and COVID and all the rest of it. So a lot of, standard footy supporters.
You'd have to think that it purely on the fact that with the border situation, that it would probably be Port, wouldn't it? Because at least you can get over there.
Yeah, I think
Whereas
Port.
Melbourne people can't get there.
Yeah, and I wouldn't have thought there'd be too many expats from Melbourne living in Perth. So, and not too many Melbourne supporters living in Perth. I wouldn't have thought. So, I think that too. I think that the Port are going to have a slight advantage in terms of crowd support. How much difference, whether it makes a difference, who knows? But it's an interesting scenario, this grand final, and notwithstanding, I'd rather see Western Bulldogs in there instead of Port. I think the good money's on Port Adelaide, of course, and it's about the first time I've ever barracked for Melbourne, I think.
That's right, and and this also plays into the narrative of of this just being really like a once in a lifetime opportunity for Port Adelaide. I mean, they should be playing Melbourne, in front of 110,000 people at the MCG, all screaming for Melbourne.
Yeah.
But they're going to get a neutral ground. They're going to get a prelim final against an opponent that has just had a ridiculous travel schedule that would never have otherwise happened. They've got a state premier who barracks for them and who'll,
or happily pumped up the crowd number.
Yeah, quite happily. We'll probably see 30,000 by the time the week's out.
Yeah.
So anyway,
yeah, they'll still lose. I've got this feeling. Peter, that they'll still lose
on Saturday night. Look, if they do, oh goodness me, there'll be some excitement in this house. Let me tell you.
Oh, the Sunday Rap Show will just consist of laughter for an hour and a half. Anyway, all right. Moving on to Crows news, and of course we had the divisive signing of Matty Crouch. I'll tell you what I think, and you can tell me what you think. I reckon we ended up being caught a little bit between the devil and the deep blue sea, Pete. We lowballed him. My understanding is it's 450 by 2. And Matty obviously would have gone to the market on that one, and as a consequence of not getting much response from the rest of the AFL community, decided 450 by 2 was pretty good, and he took it.
Still not bad money to play football, is it?
No, especially when you hardly play.
Yeah, that's right. Yeah, look, I mean, in the end, as I said through the week, Fane, in the very, very narrow context of us calling the shots on that, I'm not completely unhappy with that, and also the fact that we do, as we talked about, that sort of 25, 26-year-old age bracket is a real issue for us. So it was one of those ones, wasn't it? That I saw it, and I thought, it is what it is, and I didn't feel violently sort of upset about it. But then, if he'd gone, I wouldn't have shed a tear. Do you know what I mean? It's just one of those. I think, look, if you look at it positively, we have to sort of get back to thinking that, if he's fit and if he's motivated and he's there to play his best football, then he's an excellent player and could bring some value to an emerging midfield. Now, I know there's always the argument, of course, that he's going to take midfield time, then that needs to go to somebody else. But they've still got to have some experience in there in the guts. And I think that really what to me this signals is that we've got to get Rory Sloane out of the guts. He's got to, someone's got to tap him on the shoulder and say, look, we need some time in there for emerging players. Is that going to happen?
Bit of a discussion on Sunday with Macca regarding this. Considering, I know we had a very young set of emerging midfielders this season, and the match committee and the coaching staff could probably make a reasonable argument for running Keys, Laird, Sloan for the majority of the CBAs, with a little bit of Harry later on in the season.
Yeah.
I don't know whether the same justification can be made next year. I think Harry needs to be a permanent starter in that midfield, and I think we need to start running Sam through there. And we've also got a pick 10, Lukey Pedler, who probably needs a run through there rather than off the graveyard half-forward line.
Mm-hmm. Agreed.
My fear with Crouch is that if he's fit, they'll play him. And if Sloaney's fit, they'll play him. And you tried telling Rory that he can't play midfield. And we've also got an All-Australian squad member in Rory Laird. So if he's fit, they'll play him. And we've got a runner-up in the best and fairest, Benny Keys. Him. All of a sudden, there's a sameness about that midfield again, Peter.
Yeah, look, I agree. And I think that, we can only talk about that Matt Crouch signing in a positive light with conditions attached, can't we? We can't just say, it's going to be great that Crouch is back. It's got to be that there's got to be some, there's got to be development through that midfield. And the worry, as you say, is that I reckon it was was it Alistair Clarkson that said this? Is that the problem with having experienced players?
Yeah, you have to pick them. I read that today.
So that is, look, that's an issue, and there'll be nobody, crappier than me. Then, that if that's the way that it goes next year. So, but with that said, as you say, it was one of those things where we threw out the absolute minimum chips we thought he was worth, and for all we know, again, I'm trying to put a positive spin on it. Maybe he thinks, my reputation's been really tarnished by this. I've got to get myself back into the frame for a really good contract to see off my career. I need to put in 2 really big years here, and we might get some benefit out of him because his value. He would be, he's a professional. He would be well aware, looking at himself in the mirror, that his standing, his reputation as an All-Australian club champion midfielder is rock bottom.
Yeah. I think we moved heaven and earth to get him on the deck at the back end of the season for the very reason that we needed to show other clubs that he was capable of running out a game. And I think the fact that he basically couldn't was one of the main reasons why they all backed off. So you've got a situation where we've lowballed him. He's stayed on. We now would be looking to maximise his value, A, for the team, or B, next time round as a trade. And you can't do that with a guy playing in the twos. So, to my way of thinking, we're going to see a lot of Matty Crouch. And as you rightly pointed out, Macca said on the weekend, the real guy that needs to be moved out of there is Rory Sloane. Sloaney is the more versatile of the two. Matty's either in around the ball midfielder or he's nowhere. You get the feeling that Sloane can play a half forward, but then you're looking at, what does that mean for a guy like Braden Cook or Lachie Gallant?
Yeah.
It's a real juggling act at the moment.
It is, and you've got to have some experience in that side, because what you don't want is a Carlton Melbourne type rebuild where you just get rid of everybody and you end up winning 1 or 2 games a year. You want to be in that situation where you're still building a good culture down there. You're still you're winning a reasonable amount of games. You're not getting blown off the park every week, because then nobody gets anything out of that. So it's I can see what they're trying to do. This is more of a fairly patient and transitional kind of approach to rebuilding, rather than just letting a whole lot of kids out there to get belted every week.
Yeah.
So they want some leadership on the field and some experience on the field, which I think is okay. But you're right; they've got to balance that with getting those guys game time. Those kids that are pushing through.
Yeah. Interesting times ahead. Now, Peter, we also, because we missed last week, we probably need to spend a little bit of time talking about the under-19s game, SA versus WA, that occurred a couple of weekends ago. It was a disappointing result for South Australia, and not a huge showcase for the talents of the mainstays. How did you see that game?
Yeah, look, it was a disappointing team result, no doubt about it, and it's probably a good lead in, Scoot, just on a chat, just to ask a little bit about pick 4 for us, which is probably be pick 6 actually. But yeah, look, anyway, the game itself, disappointing result. To those close sort of watchers, probably not a surprise. They were always a bigger side than what we were, and we've got some really good top end talent, but it drops away fairly significantly after maybe 7 or 8 players. There were some decent performances, and there were also some very, very strange coaching rotations as well. And I thought it was very, very strange in the first half that we ended up at one stage in the second quarter, early in the second quarter, we went sort of 5 goals down. And then Matty Roberts just went to work, and he had a massive second quarter.
Yeah.
He really did, and he got us back. And I think he had about 8 or 9 disposals, kicked a goal, did a whole lot of stuff, and got us back to only a 3-goal margin at halftime, and had us looking pretty competitive, I thought. And then third quarter, he's rotated out of there, and he plays pretty much the second half up forward to give, I guess, really just to give other kids a showcase sort of opportunity through the midfield. So same thing happened with Horn. They moved him out of the midfield.
Horn spent a lot of time up forward, which I thought was very unusual.
Yeah, I just didn't feel like I didn't think that South Australia were ever going to win that game, but I didn't feel like we were coaching to stay competitive. I thought that we seemed to be coaching for some other reasons. Barty Magic, Wangani Malira was he was brilliant. Some of his movement in traffic was incredibly smooth. So he's certainly one to watch out for. He'll be on the rise. And Lewis Rayson, I thought, had a really good game.
I was just about to say, Rayson got into the game really well, I thought.
Yeah. I posted some stats on the chat here, and in terms of we don't always look at stats, do we? But in terms of statistical rankings, Roberts was the highest ranking player on the ground. And of his 24 possessions, Lewis Rayson hit 21 targets. It's not bad going, is it?
Yeah. Well, considering there has been a knock on his disposal.
Yeah, so I thought he was really promising. Zach Becker in defence, I thought, had a really good game, and it was really interesting to see today that there were 30 new names added to the combine invite, and Zach Becker and Isaiah Dudley were on that invite. So those 30 players, that was purely basically that was club initiated.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
So Scoot, absolutely not pick 4 on Matty Roberts. He's just not going to go up to that level. He's probably now shaping as a sort of I reckon, anywhere between 10 and 20 for Matt, depending on club's need. But I honestly, I've just got a funny feeling that pick 4 might still be valuable in a trade to trade down a bit. I think Neil Erasmus is. I think that he's shaping as the real key there, because Erasmus is not a player that looks like he would be going in the top sort of 4 or 5 players. And bear in mind that we'll have 6. I really don't think he'll go that low, but if he's still there at 6, that's, I reckon, probably where he sits at the moment, maybe sort of a 6, 7, and 8.
Yeah.
If we were to indicate that we had some interest Erasmus, I reckon you'd have a really good chance of doing some business with Fremantle or West Coast, probably Fremantle.
Hmm.
So that's where I see our pick 6 going, I think.
Assuming we still have it.
That's assuming it doesn't go in a trade.
I have a suspicion they'll throw down pick 4 for Zach Dawson. And why wouldn't you? Because I think Zach Dawson offers more than any lad in the top half a dozen in the draft this year, apart from Jason.
Yep.
And I think you would be silly not to take a view that Dawson would easily fit in that top 5 this year, and therefore, what's the problem in spending pick 4 for him?
Yeah, look, it's hard to argue that you'd probably
Jordan Dawson, not Zach.
Jordan Dawson, yeah, you'd probably ask for something in return, maybe their second round or something like that back. But yeah, I mean, I absolutely see the rationale, and the issue, of course, is that this draft is so even, really, really even. Once you get past the first few, so it wouldn't surprise me. I think that because this draft is so even, I think there's going to be a lot of business around, from sort of pick 5 or 6 onwards. I think from Gold Coast back, I think there's going to be a bit of business done with those picks.
Yep.
I just saw a bit of chat between the Draper Roberts thing. It's really, really difficult. And now that you've seen them play, Fee, what I'm trying to say is incredibly different players, and you need to be
Totally
looking
different.
at what you want, what your club needs. I mean, Matt Roberts is, I'm comfortable in saying he's really the ugly duckling of the whole draft in many ways. He's not an attractive looking player. He doesn't, but he just gets the job done, and
he'll play 200 games.
He'll play 200 games for someone. He's a very smart player, and he's not just smart in terms of, and one of the things that you could really pick up in the state game, he wasn't just smart in the way that, how he uses the ball and things like that. It's where he positions himself and how he positions himself. He's a very, very clever player. So he'll play 200 for someone. But is he that, is he that crazy, X factor, blunt, I mean, I'd like him more to a McRae kind of type, I suppose. And, we've always sort of said that, he doesn't belong in that family of, Dusty Martin and, those kind of, match changes. So he's a death by 1,000 cuts.
Yeah. I think he's a little bit more than that, Pete. I think his ability to dispose of the ball, he's a pretty smooth mover, and he can get his own pill. I think he's a little bit more than your Tom Mitchell type who'll just accumulate. I think he'll give you a little bit. He's a little bit more dynamic than that. I think the question from the Crows' point of view, if they're assessing Matt Roberts, is whether he represents more of the same.
I think that's a good point.
And, quality aside, you're talking about, say, a Luke Pedler, for example, who probably similar-ish. We've got grunt players in there, Laird and Keys. Is Matty the type, or are we thinking by the time Matty develops, he'll be ready to take over that mantle a little bit? I don't know. I can see a rationale both ways for picking Matt. I just feel like there's a couple of opportunities. Like, I know that North Melbourne would be very loath to give away pick 1. But would you do this? Would you do this, Peter? And this is a PlayStation trade. But would you do this for Jones and Smith for 1?
Ooh, I don't think I'd do. I think I'd do. Oh, jeepers, it's a big call, isn't it? I'm not sure I'd do both. I don't think I'd do both those players. I'd do probably
Smith's 30.
Smith.
Smith's 30, had an ACL. Jones is young, emerging, very much what North Melbourne need.
Yeah, probably 4 and Jones, I reckon.
I don't reckon that gets it done.
You don't think?
I don't think so. I think you've got to make to get North to get rid of one. You've got to give them an offer too good to refuse. An ex-All Australian, an emerging running half back that hits the ball hard and runs in straight lines, and can dispose of the ball. Plus pick 4. In the knowledge that there's still going to be lots of good midfield talent around at that pick. That's what I'd be.
And they actually have it. They have some really good young mids now. North Melbourne. They have some of the best young mids in the comp.
Yeah.
So Will Phillips play.
Yeah. So I mean, you're offering them 2 running halfbacks basically.
Yeah.
For 2 running halfbacks for a 3-point drop on the draft table.
Yeah.
I know I know Jones is going well, Surfs Oz, but you've got to give something to get something. And if we feel strongly enough about Jason Horn Francis, then I think we need to offer them something that they can't refuse. And given our profile at the moment, and the fact that we're going to be a little bit squeezed for space on our list, dropping 2 players in a trade isn't a terrible thing.
What about 1990s suggestion about Riley O'Brien with Goldstein getting older?
Yep. 100%. Wouldn't even blink.
Yeah.
But again, I think it would take a second player.
Yeah.
But I'd happily throw in O'Brien and Jones. I don't think O'Brien and Smith would get it done. But I reckon O'Brien and Jones might.
Good call, but yeah, you're absolutely spot on. You can't just turn up and say, here's some bits and pieces, 2 Commodores for a Ferrari. It's not going to work. So, and also that, because that this was the whole thing about, which is the point that you made a couple of weeks ago, Fane, about losing pick 2, is that pick 4, which is actually going to be pick 6, you lose that dynamic position of saying, well, we'll take Horn, but you can still take Callaghan.
Yeah. Oh, it's done so much damage to us. The coaching panel and the match committee would have been happy with that final win and happy with the win against Hawthorn, but JR and his troops in the list management committee would have been punching the walls, I reckon.
Bobby Brady talking about Fisher Mackesy. Now there's one that there's a player that North need.
Yep, but the problem with Fish is he's shown nothing. So in the open market, would you even get a second round pick for Fisher Mackesy? I don't think you would. I don't think you would. I think you get a third. So when you're talking about dealing with him, he's not quite steak knives, but he's certainly cream on. Like, he would be the player that you chuck in to get something over the line. You know what I mean? Like, if there's a bit of a star, mate, all right, we'll chuck in Fisher Mackesy as well. You know what I mean? I don't think he's enticing. I think Chase Jones would be really enticing for a lot of teams that lack a little bit of pace and ability to cover small forwards down back. And there's half a dozen teams in that boat. St Kilda would be in that boat. Not that they've really got anything that we want. But I think North are also in that boat. And that's why I'd chuck him on the table.
That's a fair call. Because I think that, once you get past the 2, there's, Dacos and Darcy and Horn and Callaghan, that's those 4 players.
Yeah.
Then you really, once you get to Gold Coast pick 5 and us at pick 6, you could just throw a blanket over it, to be honest, and it'll boil down to need.
Yeah.
Is what it'll boil down to.
Yeah, I think
If
it's
we,
that sort of draft, Peter, that usually it's, take the best available talent, but I think you do have to have an eye on your list profile with this draft.
and I think that, I mean, we could get a Scoot. I reckon Nazaya will be going. I honestly think he'll push inside the top 20. To be honest, Nazaya Wangan Miller. So I think that a couple of picks. I mean, if we don't get that trade done with North, then and if we do trade back and get a couple of picks, then you're looking at a couple of midfielders. You'd be looking probably at either Draper, maybe, because I think you're probably right on Roberts. Probably isn't quite the need, and Wanganeen Miller might be, that kind of wing halfback kind of running player might be,
You know what?
that uses the ball really well.
Why wouldn't you try him as a small forward, Pete? I know he hasn't played a lot there, but he just seems to have some tricks.
Oh, it's just like, I mean, everyone he gets the ball and everyone just suddenly stops.
Yeah,
It's just bizarre.
yeah. It strikes me as an elusive type, and I just sort of think, I wonder why he's never played up forward. Rarely played up forward. So a bit of talk on Sunday. Oh, sorry, go on.
Oh, sorry. No, you go.
No, you go, because you're going to round this off.
You go. We'll quickly get. I was quickly going to say there's also don't forget also there's a talk about Rankin and Lukosius.
Exactly what I was going to
say. Oh, okay.
No, it's good, because we had a bit of a chat about that on Sunday, and look, personally, I don't think we've got a need for Lukosius for the price. I mean, it'd be a very nice player to have on your list under the right circumstances. But unfortunately, I think that the ship sailed there, and for the type of player he is, I don't think for the currency that they would want, it's just not a value proposition. Rankin is such an interesting situation, because on form, he's very smelly on form.
Yep.
But we all know what he can do. But I don't think anyone really knows what's going on in his head. So, do you pay decent currency for a player that is a little bit fickle, or do you back yourself in to get the most out of him? I don't know, Peter. I don't know.
I've called on. I was high on Luco in his draft year. You'll remember, Peter.
Yeah.
I've called on him a little bit just because of the role that he's playing.
Yeah.
I mean, he came 10th in their best and fairest.
Yeah. In a weak side.
In a weak side, and really, I mean, he's not playing as a key position player. He's just playing as a sort of a floating sort of I mean, look, if he wanted to come home and it was a reasonable trade price, then they'll trade him in.
Yeah.
But I just think that there's a much better value to be had on Isaac Rankin, because I think that you can get him for a far cheaper price, because he hasn't played much, is he really?
No, not really. Now, Scoot, I was giving our senior statesman a serve, and he's talking about Macca, because Macca was saying that if you play well enough, you'll get selected, and that's talking about the midfield conundrum. And I challenged him and said, well, I don't think that's necessarily true.
Not right.
No, I don't think it is.
It's not right. I don't want to. You cannot be in that situation where you've got a kid that's just plodding away year after year in the sandfall, just hoping that a senior player is going to fall over.
And I guarantee you, if Riley Thilthorpe hadn't been picked up at number 2, if he'd have been picked up in the 20s, then he would have spent the whole season in the SANFL last season. He wouldn't have got a sniff. They were compelled to play him because of his draft position, and he repaid them. You've got to get games into them in the position that they're picked for. No point getting 50 games into Sam Berry in a forward pocket. Learnt nothing.
Yeah, you've got to get game time into these kids.
Yeah, anyway. I don't think Luco. I think Rankin at the right price only. We've got a bit of a list squeeze. We've got a few lads left unsigned. Davis, Ryan O'Connor, Ball Ace, Tarek Newchurch, Who else is there? There's someone else, isn't there? No, I can't think. Who else?
Jake Kelly.
Oh,
He's not
Jake
been
Kelly.
signed.
That's the one. Yeah.
Yeah. So it'll be interesting to see how that all plays out. But yeah, look, there's a bit of a squeeze on for list spots. Paddy Parnell, I'm sure that they'll give Paddy a year. I think that from what I saw, he certainly showed enough, and I don't think that they would take him in the mid-year draft just to flick him at the end of the year.
No, I don't think
after
so.
a few games when he really showed, and he showed it in the last game. He showed a bit as a small forward too.
Yeah,
He's a very talented footballer, Paddy Parnell.
yeah. I think the biggest interest for Paddy is whether he can manage to grow any facial hair over the next 12 months. Because he looks so young, doesn't he? He looks so young. It's unbelievable. But you're right, he's got some skills. He's a good little player, and I can understand why they picked him up.
Yep, I think they'll keep him. So yeah, it's a bit tight on for list space. I think that they've got to take 3 in the draft, don't they?
Yep.
And I guess that they'll have a few irons in the fire in terms of players to trade in. Whether they get 1 or 2, you probably, knowing our record, you'd probably be fortunate to get 1. That's what usually happens. So even if they could trade Dawson in, if they could, 3 picks at the draft, I think we're starting to get pretty tight.
Yep. No other Crows news that I can really think of around the traps. Still no movement on the gasworks site. I've been watching with interest there, but that's gone a bit quiet. I think that's going through an unofficial tender process at the moment. But that's about it. A few little whispers about Nathan Van Berlo. Have you heard anything about that, Pete, at all?
No, haven't heard anything at all.
No, I just 1 or 2 things about Nathan maybe being moved on.
Oh,
I don't know.
Really?
Yep. Just a little whisper. So I don't know about that. Whether he goes back to Perth or whether he might join a cohort at another club. I'm not sure. No word yet on the
club. Sorry, I was just saying Inquisitor on the chat just asking about whether we've got all our players off the books now in terms of non-AFC players. Yes, all cleared away, and that's why they've got plenty of money to splash around at the moment, which I understand that they are doing for Dawson. I think they're offering him a lot of money.
What's the situation with Stengel? I know that he's been paid out, but is he still on our list, or does he get cleared this year?
No, I'm pretty sure he's off the list. I'm pretty sure he nominated for the mid-season draft.
That's right. You're right too.
He was available to be picked up.
Yeah, that's right. Correct. All right. Varney Magic's saying Stengel 22. I assume that might be a little bit of money left over in his situation, Vardy, in 22. I thought there was something. I thought there was something about Stengel, and I think it's the dollars now that he says that. Anyway,
how much would you pay for Dawson? I wouldn't. Give him 4 years at $700,000 or $800,000 a year. Just pay it. You know what I mean? Just be serious. I talked about this a few weeks ago, Feen. If you're going to go and chase a player like that, who's third in their best and fairest, he's considered to be one of the really elite players in the competition at the moment. Just pay the money. Get him over.
Well, if it takes my PlayStation draft trade to get him, you've got a fair bit of cap space freed up. but if you're serious enough to do that, then you need to be serious enough to pay the kid. I think Adelaide's, and we've talked about this in previous years, Pete, I think Adelaide's pay strategy is wrong. I think this flat structure that we've had totally ignores the fact that we need to be able to attract good interstate talent, and the only way you do that is with a structure that recognises that players coming from interstate are in some way, whether we like it or not, making a sacrifice to play here. Whereas the second and third tier players on our list many of whom are South Australian, are not. And I think if those players want to be in a winning club, they need to be prepared for the fact that kids like Zach Dawson, oh my God, what's going on?
Jordan Dawson.
Kids like Jordan Dawson are going to have to be paid a premium. I'd happily pay Dawson $750 a year over 4, happily.
Yeah, easy.
I'd pay him $800, to be honest.
Yeah, I'd probably go to 8 without even thinking about it.
Yep, I think you just pay what you need to pay to get the player you want. And I've said this over and over, it's the same in a trade or a draft situation. You recognise, you identify the players that you want, and then you do what you have to do to get them. This thing of attaching value to a number on a draft board is flawed. You know, and I think it's the same in a trade. If you want a player, if you pinpoint that's the player that we need to top up our midfield or bolster our defence or kick us some goals, it doesn't matter what it costs, because it's the outcome you've got to be focused on, not the cost. It's the outcome. And we're a results-orientated business, so, you know, that's all that matters.
And there's a reputational component to it too, Feen.
Yeah.
You know, you want to be seen as a club that's fair income, that's a big club, that does the business, that pays the money, that gets the players, that does the deals, and just gets it done. Yep. And at the moment, we don't have that reputation.
No, because of this stupid flat pay structure and honouring seniority with massive long contracts like we gave Sloaney.
Yeah. Yep. And I think that we've signalled the end of that now with Matt.
Let's hope so. Now, the last thing I want to talk about, just real quick, have you got any word at all on Burgess? Obviously, that's gone a bit quiet because Melbourne have progressed. Do you think that's still on?
Well, I mean, I only know what, you know, you're seeing and reading. I mean, the last time I saw anything about it was Caroline Wilson saying that it was done. It was, you know, and she's pretty good.
She went pretty hard with Neil Baum though too, didn't she?
Yeah, scary, isn't it? So you just got to keep. I think we just got to keep our fingers crossed there, mate, and hope that you know. I'm happy for Melbourne to still be in it at the moment because I think they're the only team that can knock off Port.
Yeah,
but I'd like to see them out ASAP so that we can get that settled. Because he'll be with them till the end, and that's fair enough.
Yeah. Any comment on the Baum fiasco?
Just, you know, I mean, you know, both you and Buddy Magic know that I completely lost my shit and melted down about it.
Did you?
I was just so annoyed. And I was just a little bit annoyed. I just felt that we could have managed it. I mean, you know, I'm not saying that in terms of the appointment itself that we could have done any more or less than what we did, but I just feel like when there was, you know, people in the media are out there just saying this is a done deal, I thought that there was probably an opportunity for the club to get on the front foot and just say, look, you know, just to confirm, you know, we're still going through a process, blah, 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 blah. Do you know what I mean? Just manage the expectation, that's all. Yeah. I'm not having a crack at the club in terms of, look, you know, you go after these people and that's great. You know, they had a go, they didn't get it done, okay. But manage the expectation. Don't leave it for 3-4 days, however long it was, with it being out there that it was a done deal. That just annoyed me.
Yeah. Yeah, so it was probably the Monday performance of Tim Silvers that was the one, because Twitter revealed that Baum wasn't coming about 2 hours after Tim appeared on 5AA and didn't really do anything to hose it down. Kind of left you with the impression that maybe the club was a little bit blindsided as well, that maybe Richmond had come up with an increase their offer or something.
Yeah, but I'm sure that's probably what happened.
But here's the thing. Here's my opinion. If Neil Baum was serious about it, at his age, an extra $100,000 probably wouldn't have made a difference. Because my understanding was that the reason he was thinking about coming home was for family reasons. It was his wife that wanted to come back to Adelaide because obviously her family are over here. So if that wasn't the case, as it appears to be, because otherwise why would he stay, then, really what chance were we ever of getting Neil Baum? Why would he
What was
leave
going on
Richmond?
with Adam Kelly at the club champion night as well? What was that all about?
I don't know. Is he a little bit on the outer, Adam Kelly? Do you think?
Because there was
There's-
all this stuff broke about Neil Baum,
Yeah,
and then people seemed to be going out of their way on the Saturday night to
yeah.
talk up Adam Kelly and say that
Yeah.
he was the man and blah 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 blah. And so,
Yeah.
what
Well,
was
Nick's
the
made
role that
Nick's made a
Baum's
point of that at the dinner. Maybe the club were just simply playing the tone deaf straight bat on the whole Baum thing, and didn't really give a shit what was out there. Maybe they didn't care, and maybe internally it was news to them as well. I mean, someone has obviously spoken to Neil, but I guess we don't really know how serious those discussions were, whether it got to money, whether it got down to a choice. I mean, Barmy's tweet on that Monday night was pretty definitive. My heart's at Richmond or whatever the hell, and it made it sound like it was never a possibility that he was going to leave Richmond. So, and I'll tell you what, sorry, go on.
No, you go.
I was just going to say, poor Sammy Edmund, he needs to take up another career path, because he's made some very bad bets lately, hasn't he?
He has.
Anyway,
Hey, let me put this to you just quickly as we close. Is it possible that they're speaking to Barn and nobody's actually told Kelly, or nobody's spoken to, and then and then Barn sees, I don't know, could there have been wires crossed in communication? Could it be that they were talking secretly to Barn, but then it blew out and they lost control of the narrative, and suddenly Kelly finds out, and all this? I mean, I don't know. Is that possible?
I think it's possible if someone went a bit rogue. Like if someone has a connection with Barm, or if someone took it upon themselves to feel him out without any sort of club endorsement or any sort of plan in place or in mind. Maybe someone's just been a bit opportunistic and rang Neil one night and said, "Hey, what are you doing next year?" You know what I mean? That's a possibility, Pete.
Who knows?
And who would be most likely to do that? Who's gone out in the past and sourced external candidates for positions, and who's done that before?
The big man.
Yeah.
The big man in town.
That's right. Yeah, I'll just ring up my old mate Barmy. Anyway, didn't happen. Just before we leave, what do you reckon? Carlton, Rossi Lyon threw the baby out with the bathwater, didn't he? I'm not going through a process.
He's a funny man, old Ross Lyon, isn't he?
Oh, isn't he? Yeah. Any chance Clarkson still, or do you reckon he's on ice for Gold Coast?
No, on ice for the Gold Coast. That's me. I'm going to stick with that. I am wavering. I feel like I went hard on that, and I think I'm going to stick with it.
Yeah, fair enough. Well, I mean, Gold Coast were pretty firm today or yesterday that Stewie Jew was there for next year, and then out. So, but maybe they can convince Dewey to come down and coach Carlton early, and Clarko can go up there. And I don't know.
Yeah.
Has anyone picked up Teague yet?
No, I don't think so. I think Rossi's got a very, very high opinion of himself, perhaps a little bit higher than maybe what other people have got, I think.
Yes, 100%. And interesting that the sorry, go on.
Maybe coaching 2 losing grand finals isn't as attractive as what he thinks it is.
Yes, no, that's right. And stabbing a few people in the back along the way. And I noticed that the president of Carlton stepped down not long after that all went down to. So, and I think he was the one that was talking to Rossi in the first place. Anyway, Carlton's a basket case. There'll also always be a basket case. Who'd want to coach that bloody team? Their list is an absolute disaster. If I was a coach in waiting, I'd be saying, no, let someone else clean up that mess and I'll come in over the top in a few years' time when it's looking half decent.
Exactly.
Peter, I reckon that's all I've got. Thanks to everyone who's joined us on... Yeah, I think we got there. Thanks to everyone who's joined us on Discord. Sorry we didn't get anyone on tonight. I think there was 1 or 2 hands up at various stages, but we got through... a fair amount of stuff. Also, thanks to everyone who's joined us on YouTube. Don't forget, if you want to support us, you can go to patreon.com/AFL Crowcast. All your support is appreciated. Nicky Macca and myself will be back on Sunday night to review the 2 preliminary finals. And Peter, do you want to come back next week and have another Tuesday Night Live?
I think we'll go another one. Let's go another one.
All right, we'll go another one. Until then, until Sunday, thanks everyone. Stay safe, and we will see you on Sunday.
Cheers, mate. Cheers, everyone.